Horizon Zero Dawn and Zelda Breath of the Wild are two games that people love to compare, and for good reason. They have more than a few similarities, with bow and arrow wielding heroes mounting wild creatures to save a vast open world and all.
However, it'd be unfair to say that one is an imitation of the other, since they have their own fair share of unique features.
Hi, I'm Darrian P. Mack.
And I'm Adrian with the Leaderboard, and we're going to take a closer look on these two amazing open world games released in 2017.
So make sure you're stocked up on plenty of crafting materials and weapons, because this is Horizon Zero Dawn
versus Breath of the Wild.
Let's get started. The creators. Horizon Zero Dawn was created by Guerrilla Games, a Sony first-party developer. Before making Horizon, Guerrilla Games was mainly known for their first-person shooter series, Killzone. Horizon has been in development since 2011 when it was picked up from a group of potential pitches. The game's director, Matthias de Jean, said it was the riskiest idea of all that they were pitched at the time. By the end, over 20 story ideas were written before finding the one that made it into the game. They hired John Gonzalez, lead writer of Fallout New Vegas, to write the story for Horizon.
I don't need to give you a history lesson on Nintendo. Pretty much everyone knows about the house that Mario came from at this point. Hidemaru Fujibayashi has been the director of the portable Zelda games since 2001's Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages were released for the Game Boy Color. His first home console directing role in the Zelda series was for 2011's Skyward Sword on the Wii. Fujibayashi has a particular fondness for the original Legend of Zelda on the NES and appreciates how groundbreaking it was at the time, which is something to keep in mind as it'll be important later on in this video. But for now, let's go to
the origins. Horizon Zero Dawn was pitched by John Bart Van Beek, the studio's art director, and most of what he pitched remains in the game. The original pitch was a PowerPoint that he had put together with clips from movies to illustrate his concepts. The idea of giant robot animals was inspired by Van Beek's childhood love of the science fiction series Zoids. Starting out, they only had 3 core concepts that they wanted to find a way to cohesively combine with some sort of gameplay system: a female protagonist, a world that mixed natural beauty and ruins, and giant robot monsters that are stomping around said beautiful world. Their conclusion was to make it an open world game, letting them make the huge world for their protagonists to explore and their robotosaurs to romp around in.
Breath of the Wild wasn't inspired by movies, but rather its own original game. Remember how I said that Breath of the Wild's director had a particular fondness for the original Zelda? Well, that's essentially what he took his design guide from for this game. Like Horizon Zero Dawn, the original game was an open world game. Yeah, an open world game on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Bonkers, right? From the beginning, the world was free to be explored. You had to discover your way and solve puzzles, and the game didn't bother to hold your hand. Sounds pretty familiar, right? Breath of the Wild boasts one of the most robust and complex series of systems of any open world game, like throwing rusty swords into certain enemies to remove the sword's rust, or all the countless ways to combine the physics-based mechanics. I mean, check out our 107, we list a ton of those features. To make sure their layered system of, systems was fun to play, the team created a prototype to test their ideas out in. And surprise surprise, they modeled the prototype after the original Legend of Zelda, down to recreating the sprites. Too bad no one will probably ever get to play what's essentially an official demake of Breath of the Wild for the NES.
The story. Both games share some thematic similarities, like a world in ruin after some great calamity. This was literally the case in Breath of the Wild, with the entity known as the Calamity Ganon to blame for their kingdom's fall. However, the two diverge wildly in tone and plot direction. Horizon is the story of Aloy, a girl who from an early age was outcast for reasons unknown to her. Her goal is to try and find out why she was cast out and ultimately what happened to the old ones, the people who created all the ruined buildings and robotic Michael Crichton monstrosities that are seen around the mountainside. It has a bit of a dark tone and unsolved mystery to figure out. Horizon has moments in the story where you can decide how Aloy reacts to a situation, similar to Mass Effect or a Telltale game, but unlike in those games, your choice doesn't affect the overall plot. Instead, they are used as bits of flavor and spice to make Aloy feel more personal to you, like making a character react to you differently based on something you choose to do earlier. This allows them to tell the story they want to tell without having to worry about making sure every possible outcome is a satisfying one, but still makes it feel like you're on your own unique run.
Breath of the Wild is about Link, and specifically Link this time, since you can't give him a different name like it usually goes for the Zelda titles. After going into a deep sleep for 100 years, he wakes up to find that Hyrule has been taken over by Calamity Ganon, and he has to try and stop him. Luckily, an old man gives Link some tools and sage advice before you go on your quest. Again, this all feels like a huge throwback to the original Zelda, and is a much lighter tone and mission than that of Horizon Zero Dawn. Most of the story in Breath of the Wild is told through revealing the history leading to the current circumstances. That's not to say that there's no story elements that take place in the present, because, trust me, there is a lot of story to be told. There's also a great cast of characters that fans have already latched onto, like Mipha, Paya, and the Zora Prince Sidon, who some fans lovingly refer to as the Fishman of Positivity. Speaking of characters, let's talk about
the protagonist. You can definitely draw some parallels between Aloy and Link. Both are destined heroes on a quest, use a bow as one of their main weapons, and have dominion over the deprecate circuits that permeate their landscapes. Both protagonists are thrust into a world that's foreign to them, and slowly learn their true place in that order. Another similarity between Aloy and Link is that they are both the chosen ones of their society, who can bend the ancient technology of the worlds to their advantage. They do, however, have their fair share of differences. Beyond the obvious ones, like their gender, Aloy is out for answers and sort of revenge, but a lot of her story is about discovering the world and her place in it. She just wants to know why she was shunned from her tribe and why these world cult people are attacking her. It's not about her going out with a mission to save the world, she just happens to help it out in the process of her own personal quest.
On the other hand, Link is told his purpose point blank. He's the great hero, destined to save the world from evil. Link is sort of rediscovering his world, since it has changed after he went into a coma. He also has an unfortunate side effect from this extended quote-unquote hibernation, which is amnesia, which, you know, what else is new with these video game protagonists, am I right? Moving on.
The gameplay. This is where there are major similarities. Although it's not a complete surprise considering they're both in the same genre, so of course there's going to be some overlap. Both have some great mobility controls, with Aloy and Link being able to sprint and climb tall mountains and structures. Both games also offer a crafting mechanic, but each has their own spin on it. Horizon's crafting system is partially inspired by Far Cry's system, which has players hunting and scavenging for parts to make power-ups and health packs. They wanted to make sure the crafting was as simple and minimal as possible.
Breath of the Wild made their craftings in tune with the rest of their mechanics. It's all about discovery. You can find some recipes in the world from scattered papers or the locals, but a lot of the best stamina and health replenishing recipes are only found through experimenting, unless you look up a strategy guide or something. But where's the fun in that? A big difference between the two games is Link's stamina bar. When Link does anything more laborious than a fast walk, he begins to burn through that meter. This includes climbing, so you can find yourself having to camp out on a ledge for a few moments to let Link catch his breath of the wild. I made a joke. Before continuing, this adds realism, but some players were turned off by this mechanic, feeling like it was wasting their time.
For anyone who feels that way, Horizon is probably more your speed since you don't have to worry about stamina, only making sure to get plenty of med pouches crafted to boost your health bars. Also, that big eyeball icon on the screen telling you if enemies can see or hear you, if they don't see you, you're gonna need to fight.
The weapon mechanics.
Horizon and Breath of the Wild boast an impressive array of weapons. With melee weapons, swords, arrows, bombs, and traps, both Aloy and Link are ready for whatever comes their way, but the most impressive tool at each character's disposal is their electronics. Aloy from an early age has a piece of wearable tech called Focus, which helps her scan machines to find their weak points. It also helps her have better sight in general, allowing her to have precision accuracy in bow and arrow usage. Aloy can also upgrade her weapons by filling slots on them with modifications, like fire damage or extra tear damage on weak points.
Link, however, has a Sheikah Slate, a tablet-looking device that can quote-unquote download new physics-altering applications that he can then unleash on the world. Among its powers is the ability to pause time for certain objects. This freezes the object in place, be it an enemy or a massive giant ball rolling towards you. After freezing the object, Link can apply forward momentum to the object while they're frozen, so that when time returns to normal, all that force you caused will be applied all at once, usually causing whatever you hit to go flying. It can also take selfies, if you're into that sort of thing. Link also has your standard sword and axe-style weaponry that can be picked up from enemies or the ground. However, most of the weapons you pick up have a degradation system where they eventually all break. Even the weapons you'd normally consider to be permanent, like his bow, will eventually need to be repaired. But there are certain items that don't need repairing and just simply recharge. Hint, it's the sword you use in almost every Zelda game.
The open world. An impressively beautiful and expansive world can be found in both titles, but how you find them is the key difference. Horizon's open world features a day-night cycle with dynamic weather and has several distinct regions to explore, like jungles and snowy mountains. To uncover the more far-off points of the map, you'll need to climb these giant, giraffe-looking robots known as tall necks and scan the area.
Breath of the Wild also features the day and night cycle, the dynamic weather, and distinct regions, but two big differences are that, 1, the weather has an effect on gameplay, meaning that if it's raining, that mountain you want to climb is probably going to be too slippery to do so, or if there's a lightning storm, you better remove that metal or else you'll get shocked. And 2, Breath of the Wild takes the idea of a go anywhere, anytime open world to the extreme. There's still towers you need to climb to uncover more of the map, and really, it's just the map. Not having it filled in doesn't stop you from exploring it. You can even roll on up to Ganon's front door right out of the gate if you really wanted to.
Presentation. Horizon is one of the prettiest games from this console's generation, boasting graphics that are so real you'll have to sometimes stop and ask if you're watching a pre-rendered cutscene or not. The faces in particular are so incredibly lifelike that sometimes they manage to successfully leap over Uncanny Valley into, I think that's a real person territory?
You are going to look at a screenshot from Breath of the Wild and think it's a photograph, but of course you wouldn't. That isn't Nintendo's style. They've always been in the camp of stylized art over realism, partially because Nintendo doesn't release powerhouse consoles like Sony and Microsoft, but also because their games lend themselves to having a less serious and more cartoonish tone, generally. Breath of the Wild has a beautiful, painted style to it, like watching a classical piece of gouache landscape art or a Ghibli film come to life. If you've ever wanted to dive into the world of Princess Mononoke, this is probably gonna be your closest shot at it. Trust me, one trip to the Akala region is enough to make you appreciate the beauty of Breath of the Wild's presentation.
Battle of the exclusives. Being first-party games, both have an inherent goal to push their respective consoles to the limit, and both show off some of the best qualities of each platform. From captivating vistas, to impressive particle and lighting effects, to the gameplay systems that govern their reality, both games shine brightly as beacons of potential for their first-party console overlords. Horizon shows that Sony is willing to let the developers take risk and try original properties, and it shows how captivatingly beautiful a game on PlayStation can be.
Breath of the Wild shows that Nintendo is willing to take risks, but with their already established franchises. Up until this latest game in the series, everyone thought they knew what a Zelda game was. Ganon takes over, you get a sword, go through the dungeons in an order dictated by what items you get, and then beat Ganon. Now you don't have to wait for that item to defeat Ganon. You can really just defeat Ganon right off the bat, like we said earlier. This new game shows that Nintendo's aware of other games' brilliance and are willing to learn from them, taking inspiration from games like Skyrim and Minecraft, and using it to make an evolution of the franchise that still manages to feel like a Zelda game.
There you have it. Once again, I'm Darrian P. Mack.
And I'm Adrian.
And thanks for watching Horizon Zero Dawn versus Breath of the Wild.
Is there anything we missed that deserves a closer look?
Have any favorite features of these games? Let us know in the comments below.
Don't forget to click that bell icon to become part of the notification squad.
And if you like getting more out of your game, subscribe to the Leaderboard,
your home for video game facts.